Simply walk the talk.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another fascinating episode of Simply Walk the Talk. I'm your host, Josh Holland, and today I have with me Dr. Scott Bertrand. And Scott is the creator and the inventor of this amazing device that many of you maybe have seen on my Instagram and on my YouTube. It's this pretty cool device that we will obviously explain all the ins and outs about it. But I had lots of people engaging with me via direct message and emails and text after I posted it, because they're like, so we saw the video clip and it sounded like you were struggling, but at the same time, it didn't look like you were struggling. Like, it just looks like you were sitting in a seat of this thing, and it's like moving around in circles, kind of like a video game. So what is that? Well, I kept telling everyone just to be patient, because I'm going to bring Dr. Scott, the creator and the inventor of this device. He's a doctor of chiropractic, and I'll let him tell you his story, but we're going to dive through everything that got him up to the point to where I was in Atlanta, or in Georgia, just on the outskirts of Atlanta, strapped into the seat, sweating my balls off, and just having a wonderful, amazing time engaging my core. So I'll shut up and please help me welcome Dr. Scott Bertrand to the show. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, good morning, Josh, and thank you so much for having me on and the opportunity to speak to your audience. I think, like you said, the AllCore360 is unique and innovative, but kind of hard to understand when you first look at it on the video, I have to admit. So to roughly kind of help your audience, the way I've tried to explain it is, picture yourself sitting in a chair, but now let's take that chair and look at the face of a clock. And we're going to take the back of the seat and run it up the hour hand at noon, and the front of the seat's pointing at 3. So picture that from the side. There's your seat, there's your clock. What the machine actually does is take that hour hand, or the back of the seat, and tilt all the way back. So it can ride from, say, 12 to 9. So we go from perpendicular to horizontal. That's the whole range of the challenge. So what's really going on, if you picture tilting back in this chair, like you said, does that seem difficult? No, but now really picture you're tilting back in the chair, but pull the back out of the chair. Oh, now we have a whole different thing entirely. Now what you're really doing is you're being supported at the hip girdle, at the waistline, but the whole upper part of your body is suspended in space. When you suspend your body in space, it requires the contraction of all the muscles of the core. And the core is not just these 3 or 4 pretty mirror muscles. There are hundreds of muscles that comprise the core. I mean, literally, human beings are cores with arms and legs plugged in. So what we're going to do is hit all those muscles of that tube of the core, and we can do it in 10 minutes.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's really cool because, again, just to reiterate what Dr. Scott just mentioned, it's, think of a chair or stool. So a chair with no backrest. And again, you can touch on this and go deeper if you need to, but when you guys first strapped me in, so we had Blake and Jeff there, and when you guys strapped me in, at first I was thinking, okay, I remember seeing a video of this thing kind of almost in a way going upside down. I hope that this is secure. And I loved how you reassured me that it's secure, because you literally have like a seatbelt that kind of goes around your entire pelvic region. And then you've got these cushions, and then you're asked to squeeze a ball between your knees. And all of these things were great points of support. But then you say, do not allow your back to touch the backrest. So right. Take me through that, because a lot of people ask me, so what are you doing? You're just squeezing a basketball between your knees? Like, what is that?
Right. Okay. So let's talk about that. The core really starts at the pelvic floor. So we sit on the bottom of our core. Those core muscles, those pelvic floor muscles, are really difficult to engage. And the world has created Kegels, and Kegels is an exercise to help with the pelvic floor. But what we have found is, by putting a slight pressure on that basketball, if you will, between the legs, we start the contraction of the core at the very bottom. We start from the bottom, and we drive that contraction and flexion all the way up to the skull. So really, the core starts at the bottom of the skull, and you sit at the other end of it. And those 100 muscles are the muscles that we're going to challenge in the device. And it does it in an isometric fashion.
So for those wondering, this fancy word isometric, it usually is coincides with a hold, so to speak, right? So something that you maintain a contraction for a period of time, and this is something that I quickly was like, as soon as you started to move and change the angle of the all core, I thought, okay, now I see what's happening. And another thing you touched on, which I thought was important, is before we even got started, I know that there's a series of tests that you can take a person through. Now, we, for whatever reason, I think it was because of my timing issues, we didn't have the time to go through and test that. But I do think that's important for people to kind of understand where they are. So creating a baseline, and then the direction or the trend you can take them by challenging their core, showing them, making them more aware. I speak a lot about awareness, and that's within the environment and also the within our bodies. This is one thing that I quickly realized: there are some asymmetries in my body, and this is, I think most people know this, but you really, really feel it when you sit in the chair and it starts to move.
One of the purposes of the AllCore is to create that, like what you're saying, core balance. So when we started on the program, we realized a lot of us are imbalanced, and we're imbalanced for multiple reasons. I mean, we're brought into the world right or left-handed. Not that that's an imbalance, but how we use that hand over the course of our lifetime becomes a dominant side and usually a stronger side. All of us have an imbalance from front to back. Our abs aren't near as strong as our low back, as much as we don't understand that. It's because we bend over half of our life. Our shoulders are in front of our hips a lot. So we engage the lumbar erectors quite a bit in our daily activity. So they're strong, but we very rarely engage our abs. So across the board, Americans and all of us are pretty weak in the abs. So we have the right to left imbalance. We have the front.
All right, we have some technical difficulties. I will try to get Dr. Scott back on. So where we left off, where I lost you, Dr. Scott, is when you started to mention, so we have the side to side imbalance, and then we have the front to back imbalance, and then that's when it started to kind of go out.
We lost you then. Okay, well, the third imbalance that we all have, all of us, is we have a preference for turning clockwise or turning counterclockwise. We actually found that to kind of unique, but you'll actually feel those imbalances when you ride. So back to your original question, what we do is we bring a client, a patient into the facility, and we baseline them. And that's the term we use. And we're going to challenge those four quadrants individually in an isometric fashion. And not only will that point out to the user how imbalanced they really are, but allows the provider to kind of customize a program to initially balance the core. Most of our injuries are created because of the imbalanced musculature in our core. So we balance your core, and then we can make that core much stronger and much higher endurance once we get you to the balance. Now, the amazing thing is, most of us have never challenged the core appropriately or correctly. So the gains that we all make in the first month are extraordinary. It's very rewarding to see how quickly you improve. Your body's never been challenged correctly. And when it is, it responds. It loves being challenged appropriately.
Yeah, this is part of what we discussed when you and I first sat down. We had our quick little initial chat before starting the exercise or the ride, so to speak. You had mentioned how we, as a people, typically we view ab and core work as either planks, which are also like isometrics, and that's fine to a certain degree, but then we also go to the other extreme and we just do a lot of crunching and flexion and extension, thinking that we're really doing something. And I love that part of the discussion, because I myself, as a trainer, like to encourage people to add a variety of movements and a variety of methods to be able to fully train the core. So I also love this term that you're using, the core balance. It's a huge feature. And so when you take that, you now all of a sudden strip everyone's thinking, their normal way of thinking, of like, well, wait a minute, so I shouldn't be doing crunches? It's like, well, not that you shouldn't be doing crunches, but there's way more to core work than just crunching, flexion and extension in the torso.
Right.
So maybe you could touch on that for the person out there who's like, well,
Sure.
I was able to get really good aesthetic abs by doing a bunch of crunches. So what do you say to that, Dr. Scott?
Right. Okay, and that's a really good point. And I know a lot of us go to the gym for the aesthetic value of the abs. This isn't created for the aesthetic value, but I will say this: it ends up creating a six-pack, which is a lovely side effect. But that's really not the design. The design is to balance and strengthen the core.
Mm-hmm.
And you made a really good point. Let's think about this. Like I said before, we have a tube of muscles. Every animal on the planet, including ourselves, has a tube of muscles with arms and legs plugged in, hoofs and flippers, fins and whatever, to locomote. But we're this tube of muscle. And that tube of muscle has 360 degrees of potentiality. There's the big deal that nobody's really paying attention to. This core can bend forward, certainly like in a crunch, but it can also go 5 degrees farther this way, and this way, and this way, and this way, and this way. So it has 360 degrees of potentiality. What in our minds made us think that we could choose 1 degree, like in a crunch, or maybe throw a side bend in and think that just doing 2 degrees of a challenge of a 360 degree muscle would be adequate? Thinking back on that, I'm not even sure where we even got that idea to begin with. I mean, that's obviously incorrect. Here's the second thing, and you made a good point of that. We go into the gym and we do crunches, and we work on our rear end off doing crunches and sit-ups. And me, I hate to tell you, I've done millions of them. I have. And I wasn't really necessarily happy with the results, but I have done millions of them. But when I left the gym, and I'm talking to all of you now, you never had to do a sit-up in the real world. You don't do sit-ups. There's no athletic event where you hop on the ground and bend in half 100 times. There's not an event like that. So why are we spending countless hours creating a skill set that's never used in real life? The core is used isometrically. And by that, I mean, its design is to maintain a perfect relationship with the weight of your shoulders over your hips. You get injured when you're out of that balance. So think about sports. Every single sport, the starting position is in this perfectly balanced state. Your arms are slightly flexed. Your knees are slightly flexed. Your spine is perfectly straight up and down. Every time you do any exercise movement, you're in that perfect posture. No matter what exercise you're doing, you're maintaining that perfect posture. It's your core that does that. It's your core that gives you that perfect posture when you do the bench press and the long jump. It's the core. And if you don't balance it properly, it sets up a problem for damage and injury in the future. And you can see that in low back pains all over the country. It's a problem.
It is, and very well described. Thanks for that input. I definitely want to kind of backtrack a bit, just because it's, from our timing constraints and whatnot. We obviously, if we need to, we can do another episode, because I love your energy. I love the passion.
Thank you.
I want to definitely highlight the fact that you created this. So there was obviously a void or something missing within your protocols or your lifestyle, your career, whatever the case may be. And you came up with something, because I remember overhearing you talk about how you still have kind of the beta model, the first model.
I do, yeah.
Right?
That's right.
So let's talk about that, because I am very fascinated with the creation process. And being a very curious person, when I was younger, I would always pull things apart to see how they operated, to see how they worked.
Right.
So this, I think I would be remiss not to at least bring this up with an inventor on the show.
Well, what happened to me personally, and I think with a lot of people that get involved in healthcare, they have a personal injury or something that happens to them that wakes them up into this space. So when I was 18, I was in the service, and I had a skydiving injury where I broke my low back. I was thrust into spinal care at a young age. And I'm just sharing with you, the care they had at that time was brutally uncomfortable, did not feel like it was working at all. And I quit doing that therapy. Now I broke my low back, but I wasn't paralyzed. So I don't put myself in that place with those people that are struggling, but I had some issues. But I realized what they were doing at the time was inappropriate and wrong. So I quit. Fast forward several years, I jump off the high dive in a swimming pool, and I hit somebody in the pool and break my neck. So now I've here we go again. I'm thrown into the spinal cord injury therapy with the hopes at least that it had gotten better, because it was horrible 10 years ago. They put me back in the, and it's the exact same thing. And they're doing the exact same things that are wrong. And I said to myself, I'm just going to wipe the slate clean. You guys are off base here. The core is not designed to bend in half. In fact, if you look at the research, it says, if you look at what's bad for your low back, well, sit-ups are, and crunches are, and leg lifts are. But when you go to the therapist for a low back injury, you're going to do sit-ups and crunches and leg lifts. And does that even make sense in your head? No, it doesn't even make sense. So we've got to realize what the core is designed to do. And here's the biggest thing. It's a statement that I can live by. The core is designed to move efficiently and gracefully through space against gravity. It's the organ of locomotion, and we think it's our legs. It's the core. We can take a perfectly trained core and go hit a golf ball wonderfully, but we can't train a perfect core by hitting golf balls. We have to start by training a perfect core. Then that core can do anything. And that's what we do here on the AllCore. Balanced, strong, efficient. And we, like you saw in your ride, I can give you a cardiovascular exercise while you're on it. I think you doubled your heart rate in 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And okay, so back to the mind of the person that's like, wow. So you had this issue. You seemed to come up with this idea of like, I need to create something that properly trains the core to get me out of this situation. But then what? You grabbed a chair, you strung it up by resistance bands or something?
No, that's a good point. And I'm just sharing with you because I realized, and you said just right. First thing I say, obviously bending in half is not the way to go because there's way too many muscles. So, we have to hit all the muscles. Obviously flexion extension is not how we use it. We need to make it isometrically. Obviously this core can move in 360 degrees. We've got to challenge it that way. Obviously, the core is not designed to put 50 pounds on my chest and move around. It's designed to move me around. So this is the weight of the resistance. It needs to be my weight, your weight for you, my weight for me. That's why this is always customizable and perfect. But having said that, taking from there to this machine, that was a tough jump. I'm just saying. I mean, I had all these thoughts, but how to do that? I can't. I'm knee deep in paperwork in 6 months trying to figure that out. But I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm Christian and I believe in God, but this came to me in a dream. It came not just in a part, it came in completion. And I got up and drew it, and I've been building it ever since. I think God gave me this to give to people who desperately need this. What it's done for the spinal cord injury space, the paralyzed, the amputees, the cerebral palsy, the scoliosis, these incredible spinal difficulties, it's done so well in that place. But when you see those same people, I have people in wheelchairs with six packs. So when the world wants six packs too, and they want performance and they want endurance and they want aesthetics. If you have 30 minutes a week, this can give you all those things. You owe it to yourself. You really do. This is how it was meant to be trained.
Well said. Well said. And I respect that. I think there's a lot to say about having a vision and then bringing that vision to fruition, so to speak. And I'm certain there's a big effort and teamwork that goes into that. So shout out to all those who do support people with great ideas. You're a prime example of creating something like this. So I now think, okay, because let's go back to how I even first discovered this. I think it's an amazing story, and I'll try to make it short. But basically, my mom, she was in a car wreck, a fatal car wreck, in the fact that her sister, my aunt, died, and it was a very traumatic event. My mom obviously had a lot of different, she had some broken ribs, a lot of bruising, and then obviously the trauma of dealing with that was very, very great. And so I took it up on myself to fly from London. At the time I was on tour with a client. I flew in from London to take care of my mom, to try to just be there for her, right. To support in any way that I can. And so I encouraged her to do some of the things that I would have her do from a physical therapy perspective, a mental health perspective. And I also encourage her to get a trainer, and whatever that meant, either go to the local gym, find somebody, I'll help vet that trainer for you specifically. And she ended up stumbling upon an online trainer, and I don't recall his name, but he's known as, I guess, the guru of abs. And he's a guy, I guess, that's based in the Georgia area somewhere. And he came in and tried out this contraption. And my mom follows everything he does, which is, it's kind of cute and sweet. I'm just happy that she found something that she enjoys doing, right? So I guess this gentleman posted a video of him doing it, and my mom sent it to me and said, "Ooh, son," she said, I know if this was tough for him, she calls him coach. I know if this is tough for coach, this is probably going to be tough for you. Have you tried anything like this?" And I looked at it and I was like, "No, actually I haven't." And as soon as I saw it, the first thing I thought was, well, he's not doing anything. Second thing I thought was, wait a minute, no, this does make sense. Like from a core perspective, I looked at it with a different eye, obviously, than let's say most people would look at that.
Right.
And I go, wow, like this is pretty cool. I wish I could try it. And so, of course, first thing I do is I try to find out where this apparatus would be set up. And at the time, I was still in New York. And then I had an opportunity, or I saw that you guys are based in Georgia, just on the outskirts of Atlanta. And I was thinking, well, I don't know when I'm going to ever be in Atlanta. And lo and behold, there's an opportunity that came up. That's when I reached out to Blake. Blake was very helpful and has continued to be helpful. In fact, he's the reason why we are doing this podcast now. Yeah. And I finally got a chance to try it. And my mom was like, "Oh, son, how was it? You know, were you sore?" And I, obviously, you see the video that I posted. Like it was a challenge. It definitely was a challenge. My heart rate was up. The difference between the video that I saw and what I did was that I was surrounded by this amazing full spectrum sauna. So I know that's another addition to what you guys are doing. And I think we have some mutual connections in the full spectrum sauna world. Yeah. But what about, and we can obviously discuss like where it's available now and where you foresee it to be available in the future, but let's discuss the person that's at home that says either it's not in my area, I don't have access to it, nor do I have the means to be able to get on this contraption. What would you say to the person that obviously still needs to benefit from this type of exercise or technology, but what would you do or suggest for a person to do in the interim until they can get to? If
they could not get to an AllCore, what would I recommend?
Yes.
Well, here's what I found, Josh, and I found this kind of interesting. I wouldn't necessarily have known this going into it, but when we do our core evaluations, we can kind of tell what people have the most balanced core. And based on the conversations with those people, we can say, okay, those lifestyles, those exercise patterns, those type of activities seem to allow people to own a more balanced core. Let's put it that way. So those activities, I'll say planking without question, planks is a good activity. The downside to planking, it is dependent on your upper and lower extremities and their functionality. Fortunately, with the AllCore, you don't need to be able to use your arms or legs. But if you can use your arms or legs, planks are a good resource and something you can do at your house. And they work extremely well. But the other thing is, they're balanced activities. Like for instance, if your sport is golfing, it's a very unbalanced activity, and you're creating an unbalanced core. But if your sport is jogging or horseback riding or swimming or gymnastics, all of a sudden you are starting to develop a little bit more core balance. So those are the activities I would recommend people do: running, bike riding, things that require balance, but requires it bilaterally, not a unilateral involvement. Anything that's bilateral and like I said, in a balanced fashion. Hopefully we'll have some AllCores near them. We're growing fast. I would also recommend those people that really are interested to reach out into their community, because there's a good possibility that a therapist down the street or a chiropractor around the corner would love to add this to their clientele or their regime. So they could just reach out to the chiropractor or therapist and say, "You need to get one of these because I'm coming." Yes. That'll help expand.
I think it's a great point, fair point. And and for those that are curious, we have you and I and the team. We've talked offline about possibly coming together to do some work together.
Sure.
And I have this series because I think about timing, right? Like, so the AllCore ride is 10 minutes, right?
Right.
And for a long time, like for the past, let's say 5 years, I developed on YouTube this core series, which goes up to 10 minutes. And it's basically taking a person through a 10-minute plank. And I can say this, the AllCore360 can be much more difficult, but it also can be much less difficult. And so I think that spectrum there is important. So you can take a person who is, let's say, completely incapable of doing a 2-minute plank, but you can get them a really good exercise on the AllCore. And I think that's the difference between taking people through a 10-minute plank process. Like it would take approximately 10 weeks to do that. Whereas you jump on the AllCore and you can get some benefit to your core within 10 minutes. Yeah. So
that's a really good point. You can vary the resistance, allowing that person that can't go at a plank for 10 minutes. You can build up towards that. And our criteria is if you can get in a car and get to a facility, we can start you on a program. Your goal could still be like yours, going to 0, but we'll start you where you need to be. And it doesn't matter if you have a bad elbow that day. But your 10-minute planking exercises, I would advise people to do those if they can't get to this, and then just help us get these into their neighborhood.
Well said. So let's quickly, because I know we have about, let's say about 10, 15 minutes before we need to wrap up. But let's talk about it like this. I want to create the best visual possible. And so feel free to add in or take away where necessary. So a person comes in for the first time. I would assume they do a full evaluation of their health history, whatever injuries, all of that stuff, right? And then they meet with someone like yourself or one of your team. They sit down in this chair with all these questions in their mind about what's going to happen, right? But then what? So let's just imagine it's a suspended chair contraption, right? We'll call it that. And there is a backrest. So there is a backrest there, but the goal is to get strapped in very securely and then squeeze the ball between the legs. And then you encourage them not to touch or not to allow their back to settle onto the backrest. So I guess you would be, you sit up with very tall posture. It'd be like sitting in a regular chair without allowing your back to touch the back of the chair, correct?
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Okay. And then for a first-time rider, so when you're sitting upright, that would be considered 90. Is that 90? Yeah. So 90 degrees is when you first sit in it and you're getting strapped in. Then you would maybe take this person, let's say, how quickly do you anticipate a person to be able to get, let's say, either results or, what does the process look like? Do you immediately take them to 0, which is all the way back, facing the ground? Or do you kind of titrate them and slowly go up?
Yeah, you're right. Titration would be how we would do it. But what we said earlier is we would do that core evaluation. Mm-hmm. So when you do the baseline core evaluation, that's going to kind of determine the weakest link in their core. So all of us need to concentrate on that weak link. So the device develops the weak link. It's like if you were doing barbell curls and you were right-handed and you did 10, your left arm probably worked harder because you're right-handed. Eventually that arm's going to catch up because it's going through more work. When you're on the AllCore, that weak side is being put through more of a challenge. The easier sides are just kind of hanging in there till the weak side catches up. But when it catches up, then you can really drive down that the angle that really increases the strength. And that's kind of where we go with it at that point.
So the tilt or the angle is one component. And again, I'm trying to draw this picture. So I'm playing a little bit
visual.
Dumb. Yeah. So we've got the angle in which, let's say, imagine you were tilted back in a chair without support. Well, I guess the support would be your core, right? So you're tilted back in this chair, but then that chair starts to rotate, right? And the rotation is what starts to really involve the deep intrinsic musculature around the core, around the spine, but definitely like the obliques. That's one thing that I noticed almost immediately was like, oh my goodness, like you cannot trick it. You either settle your back onto the backrest, which you're encouraged not to, or you have to engage your obliques. Once the chair starts to rotate to the side at that backward angle, you can't help but to feel your obliques.
Right.
And so
it does it.
Yeah. So then, let's say we're rotating out on that axis, right? You're rotating. Now you start to face, let's say, because you're facing up, slightly upward, chest upward at first, but then as it rotates on the axis, you start to be at a point to where you're facing the ground. And I know this was important because you had explained to me, and I thought it was a funny part of the video that I created, in which I don't know if I posted this part, but you had asked me, like, do you walk around like this? Like you had this funny walking motion. I kind of joked around with you, but you pointed out the fact that our low backs usually are stronger, which is why it's easier to maintain. Typically, it's easier to maintain that
for most people,
right. To when you're facing down, having to try to keep your back up tall and in good posture, it's a little bit easier. Can you talk about that and why?
Well, and like you just said, and can you see me, Josh? If I do this?
I see.
Okay,
yes.
So here's how most of us walk around like this, and what happens is that really engages our low back. So we're working on the tabletops, and we're doing our dishes, and we're doing things like this all day. So these are being used constantly. But do we ever walk around like that?
Right.
No, we never engage that. That doesn't happen. So really, we sit around, and this is never engaged. In fact, it's out of tone and just kind of hangs there with a lot of people. So that's the big imbalance we'll catch right away. And when you start developing that isometric abdominal muscle, you'll be shocked at what this feels like. This is a really nice thing to have. When you develop that kind of core, you won't let that go. And it's 30 minutes a week, Josh. My goodness, people spend more time on the commode scrolling on their phones. 30 minutes a week will make an incredible core and give you some cardiovascular work. It's what we need in this space. All of us have the 3 easy payments, 1995, ab chair, ab core, ab roller, ab seat, ab something. Yep. What that says is we all want that, but they're all under the bed because that doesn't work. So at the end of the day, this works. We have time. The need is there. The goals are there. People just have to find it. They need to sit down in here.
Well said. Well said. So a couple of things before we start to wrap up, because these are all great points. And I can be one to definitely say it's beyond worth it for people to find this. And I'll do everything in my power to have this product become available in most major cities. And if it were up to me, I'd make sure it's available in every city, in every town.
Me too.
So, but here's the thing. We've got this amazing device. You can do the ride. You can do it as much as humanly possible. Until we can get to a point where it's near you. We talked about doing planks and things like that, but this should just encourage people to do different forms of training and listen to what Dr. Scott mentioned early on in this episode, in that we should be rethinking the way that we've been taught, so to speak. And if it's not working for you, if you're still looking for ways to strengthen your core, that clearly everything you've been doing up until this point is not working. So what would you say is a goal for the company and for what you've created? Because I know that there's some things in the horizon. You don't feel like you have to talk about it if you're not ready to talk about it yet. But what is your goal with this, and how do you see this moving forward in the next 5 years?
And I appreciate that. And you said it pretty early on that there's no reason everybody doesn't have a good, solid foundational core. Everything we do, from walking to dishes to sports, is dependent upon that. But that's a space, that's an important space, and we want to be involved in that. But from a company mission standpoint, its health effects are so dramatic that we really need to get out into the wellness centers and the therapy centers and expand it into the part of the population that requires it for good activities of daily living. People that just need to be able to live in an optimal, maximal way. Those are the people I really want. And that's the goal of the company, to take care of those people. There's a lot of people out there like yourself, though, that are in that more maximum range of physical fitness, that more extreme range of your athletes, your professional athletes, even some really good weekend warriors. There's a whole group of those people that it'll change their lives dramatically. I mean, I have golfers that come in purely because it adds 30 yards to their golf drive. I don't play golf, but apparently that's really important to those people. Yeah. So they'll come in and do that. I mean, so it depends on what your goal is, but our goal, silly maybe, I want to change the planet. Yeah. I want to wrap my arms around the planet because the need is worldwide. And the only reason we haven't done that now is we haven't grown big enough, fast enough, strong enough, quick enough. The people like you and the people that are seeing it now can make this happen. And yeah. I'm almost going to ask you to be almost obliged, because what it does in that wheelchair space, we all know people that have had strokes. We all know people that need this care. Why would we not get them to one of these? What it does for them is amazing. Go to the website. It'll just make you cry. And so that's the goal. I want everybody to have a six-pack, just like we all do. But what I really want is quality of life. And that's really what we're pushing. And this really helps with that.
You touched on a very key, important point, and I think it's worth reiterating, and that's the fact that even the handicapped or physically challenged people in the world are also finding a lot of benefit out of this. And there's a few people within my social media channels that follow what I do, support what I do, and every once in a while they say, yeah, Josh, well, it'd be nice for you to post something that that we in our community could also use. And I go, stay tuned. And so here we are. Here we are, right? This is a contraption in which many people within the wheelchair community come to you and come to the AllCore team to utilize. So there you have it. You hear it here first. Find a system, demand from the insurance or from your local physical therapist or chiropractor or whomever, demand that they get this, because this can help enhance your quality of life.
Without question.
So on this show, whenever I have a guest on the show, I always finish with a couple questions. And one of those questions is actually quite funny. I can't remember if I even prepped you for this one or not, but it's a fun one. Basically, what are your top 2 pet peeves? It's something that
in my world,
from any facet of your life or career.
Well, that's interesting. Primarily, my highest pet peeve is people who are late. I find that remarkably rude. I do not like that even a little bit. And disrespect. I mean, I think we owe each other respect. I think when we walk up to somebody, we should respect them before they talk. We've lost respect for each other. And if I had top 2, I think you got me on those.
Very, very well said. And I can definitely vouch for that as well. I think being prompt is it's simply a matter of honoring each other's times, our own time, but also the time of other people. We should not expect just because it's our time that our time is more valuable than anyone else's. So I appreciate that very much so. And then the last one that I usually ask is, what is something you're most grateful for? And again, it can be from any facet of your life or career.
Well, I would say children and grandchildren. I mean, that's just, if you don't have either, you want both. But extremely grateful that I had the opportunity to share the AllCore. I mean, I know that I've been working on this for 30 years. So I'm 67. Basically, I'm telling you, this has been my entire life. And I'm seeing it helping people. And there's no better reward than that. This is all I've ever wanted to do. And it's been the most gracious thing I've ever been able to do. And I appreciate your help.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I'm very grateful for you. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Clearly, I had a very, very difficult couple of days while I was in Atlanta, and it was super busy, but I did my best to be there because I know how important it was just from looking at it and just from watching and diving through different videos. And I thought, I'm not going to let an opportunity slip yet again by being near you guys without at least trying it. And I'm so happy I did that. And
me too.
for the people listening, definitely stay tuned as I'll roll out more videos online. I'll be doing some stuff on YouTube. And as I mentioned throughout the episode, my hope is that we collaborate on some projects together, and just definitely stay tuned. I will put in the show notes the best ways to find out more about AllCore360 and Dr. Scott. But just quickly, if you could mention, what is the website?
The website at www.allcore360.com. All one word, allcore360.com. You go to the YouTube channel, we've got dozens and dozens of videos there. And they're mostly testimonials, but I will share with all the people that are listening, we have scads of really good research. I mean, this is not just something that people are talking about. Some of the best research centers in the world have worked on the AllCore and proven what we're saying here is not just talk or anecdotal. This is research proven, evidence-driven results.
Yeah,
it's nothing I'm just saying. It's proven. So don't miss the opportunity to use it if you have the opportunity to do so.
Amazing. Well, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you've done. I look forward to working with you very much in the near future. And for everyone listening, thank you for supporting the show. Go check out AllCore360. We'll send all of the social media tags so that you can follow them there. And until next time, this is Simply Walk the Talk, and we will see you soon.
Walk the
Peace.
talk, talking facts.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten your seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, you better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better go give us a lesson. Yeah.
Simply walk the talk.